Welcome to In Her Image, a podcast where we seek and celebrate our Mother God through scripture, scholarship, mythology, the arts, and everyday life. I am Jess Burdett, and today our newest co-host, Jessica Woodbury, has a very special interview for you to kick off her series of talking with people about their experiences with our feminine divine mother. Today, we have the privilege of hearing her interview McArthur Krishna, who recently published a volume of so many experiences with Heavenly Mother. McArthur Krishna graduated from BYU with both an undergraduate and master's degree. She co-owned an award-winning ideas marketing firm for a decade until she retired, got married, and moved to India. Over 8 years, she has written 19 books. 6 co-authored with Bethany Brady Spalding at Deseret Book, including A Girl's Guide to Heavenly Mother and A Boy's Guide to Heavenly Mother. Along the way, she has coordinated some of the first art featuring women to be hung in the LDS Conference Center, Kathleen Peterson's art from the Girls Who Choose God series, commissioned and curated the first art show focused on Heavenly Mother with artists from around the world, and her own art was selected for the church's International Art Competition. The art by Caitlin Connolly from their book, Our Heavenly Family, Our Earthly Families, was the first art portraying Heavenly Mother published at Deseret Book. After its release, the LDS Church purchased a 12 by 8 foot piece for their permanent collection, and it currently hangs at the Church History Museum on Temple Square. McArthur believes that unflinching hope, a lot of hours working with friends, and Wi-Fi can change the world. Bottomless guacamole helps too. She's always got more in the works to live up to her favorite titles of Holy Harasser and Hogwash Eradicator. Without further ado, we give you Jessica Woodbury and McArthur Krishna.
I am very excited to start our series today talking with McArthur Krishna. And I have known McArthur for a few years, I feel like. I met her first when she was speaking at an event. And I remember going up to her, and I think it was the Certain Women Art Show when you were speaking there. And I had just been so grateful for everything that McArthur had done because I had owned her books, the Girls Who Choose God series for my girls. I had the Earthly Family, Heavenly Family. And then you work around Heavenly Mother and the Girls and Boys Guides to Heavenly Mother. And I had heard her talk on podcasts, and I just had been so impressed with your spirit and with your stamina and with your optimism. I remember going up to you at that and just asking you and talking to you about how you just keep this optimism and being so grateful for that and for the way that you talk about our Divine Mother, just full of that joy and that optimism. It just exudes out of you, and it's so contagious. So I'm so grateful for the work that she has done. Today, to start off this series, we want to start by talking to her about her most recent project that she has been working on with a few others. And that was just published, and you can order on Amazon right now. And it is the second version of Cherish. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that as we begin, and how, we've had Ashley Carnicelli and Trina Cottle come on about a year ago to share about the first volume. Mm-hmm. But for those that didn't listen to that episode, could you give us a brief introduction into what the book is about and how it came about, and then talk about what led you to publish the second volume?
Yeah. So Ashley and Trina and I all come to the project led by the Spirit, but with completely different stories. So it's fun to hear from each of us how it's different. I came to it because I was giving firesides. And so every time I do a fireside, I was doing firesides sometimes even a couple times a month. And every time I would do a fireside, someone would come up to me and say, I have an experience with Heavenly Mother. I have a testimony of Heavenly Mother. I have a piece of art I would like to share with you. And I would say, please tell me, I want to hear. And then after this happened a dozen times or so, I'm a little slow in the uptake. It took a dozen. All of a sudden I thought, I should not be the keeper of this information. The fact that these people are having these beautiful experiences felt in a lot of ways like a testimony meeting. someone standing and saying, here's my experience. Here's what I want to share with you. Here's how I want to lift you with this love. And so I thought to myself, what do I do with this? What do I do with this? And I knew of obviously, I mean, Beth and I had done books before, and Catherine Sontag and Rachel had done beautiful poetry books, and Dove Song had come out. I mean, there's lots of things around Heavenly Mother pieces. But I realized that we hadn't had kind of a testimony book. We hadn't had gospel Sunday school lesson on it. So in our Sunday school, we do a lot of call and response. We say, here's what the doctrine is. And then we say, what's your experience with it? And the teacher opens it up and people say, when I paid my tithing, I had this and this. When I paid my tithing, this. I've had this experience with this. And so I thought, what would be an amazing idea is to have this experience. So I thought of the idea of collecting it. One of my co-authors, Trina, thought of the idea of kind of structuring around the gospel topics essay. So it's a call and response where you say, here's what we know from the gospel topics essay. For example, our heavenly parents walk side by side. Side by side is a quote. And then people tell us all their experience about how that fits within that idea. And the reason we decided to do 2 volumes is 2 or 3-fold. One is after the first volume came out, I had a dozen people get a hold of me and say, I wish I would have known this was coming. I wish I could have been part of this. I have a testimony about this. I had this experience. And I thought, oh, there's still more, right? It's still coming. And because I was really curious about what men thought about the Heavenly Mother, because in most of the places I go, it's women who approach me, or it's a Relief Society fireside. And so I was really curious about how this was playing for men. And so I was on a different podcast. I put out the call and I said, hey, send me an email. Tell me what this is about for you. And I was overwhelmed with the response, just overwhelmed with men having experience. And I still think it resonates more with women than men, but I didn't want to leave men out. In fact, one man said, you're the first person. He said, my wife and her friend meet to have divine feminine conversations. He said, but you're the first person to ask me as a man what I think about this. And I thought, that's probably to my shame. I love talking to women. I feel the sisterhood with women. And so probably it didn't even cross my mind that maybe I should be inviting men to the conversation, right? And so for me, it was also a little bit of a call to repentance, right? That this is a doctrine for all of this. She is our mother, all of us. And so I thought, okay, I want to do a second volume, partly because they just keep coming, and partially because I wanted to proactively invite men into the conversation. And so that's been really satisfying. The second volume has even more pages than the first volume. And we had people down to the wire, even past the deadline, saying, can I please get in? Can I please get in? It's an absolute testimony to me that Heavenly Mother, I mean, we all know she's our mother, she's eternal, but it's not like after volume 1, she just quit having experiences with people, right? Like it is literally ongoing.
Yeah, I can imagine. I know it's probably a lot of work, but the thing is, you could probably create volume after volume after volume of this for the rest of your life if you felt
Yeah.
called to do so. Because as you said, even I contributed to the first volume, but I had a lot going on in my life when everything was going on for the second volume. And there are many things that, I could have shared or others that were not aware of it or
Yeah.
also in similar circumstances. But I love how you have felt called to kind of reach out to these different groups that sometimes are not as much a part of the conversation.
Yeah.
So with the second volume, it's organized in the same way as the first
Organized the
volume.
same way.
Yeah.
We really
Okay.
believe in preaching along the gospel topic essay lines.
Mhm.
I mean, we can think and we can consider and we can talk with our friends any which way we want. But
Mhm.
when we are putting something out in the public, then to me, I feel really compelled to preach along the lines of the gospel topics essay. And frankly, it's expansive. So I don't feel constrained by sticking to that. And so I think, especially when you dig into the footnotes, it is it is plenty to chew on. In
Mhm.
fact, what we're talking about for volume 3 is doing a study of our Heavenly Mother, because Trina, one of my co-authors, spent a year digging into the primary sources on the footnotes and examining the lines of the essay. And there's a year's worth of information to study. So I think
That's amazing.
it's exciting to think about what's there.
Hmm. I would love to pick up that. I did a similar thing myself because I know that when I found the BYU Studies article that was a primary source for the Gospel Topics essay, that I started going down that rabbit hole and trying to find those primary sources and read more from them. And it was amazing how much meat was there. I did not dedicate, I'm sure, nearly as much time as Trina did. And so I
Yeah.
haven't been able to reap the full benefit that I'm sure that she has. So there would be so many people who could
Yeah.
really love and appreciate and
And I think
benefit
it's
from
useful.
that.
I mean, not all of us are researchers, right? I mean, Trina's an editor and a researcher, and so she's good at that, right?
Mhm.
But to pull all of those places, all of those ideas and places, and again, people's thoughts on it into one place, I think would be a really useful tool.
Yeah, absolutely. So with this second volume, you said that it shares more voice of men's voices than the first volume. How is it similar? I know within the first volume, there's a lot of poetry, there's some experiences. Is it a similar kind of makeup as far as the portion of experiences and
Yeah, those were
poetry?
the things we kind of invited and what we received, right? And so there's poetry, art, songs, fables, and testimony experiences of here's what I felt. Here's how my heavenly mother has blessed my life. I mean, so there's this very similar mix. I think probably a little bit less poetry and a little bit more vignette writing, but it's the same size of book and kind of short form. So it's very accessible. You can pick it up, open a page, and read one, and then let it sit next to your table for a week, and then pick it up something else. It's not something you have to sit down and consume because none of us have a lot of time.
Absolutely. Yeah, I love that about the first volume as I've read it. And the second volume, I still haven't had a chance to look at because it just came out and
Just came out.
I
Yeah.
have ordered it, but it's supposed to come, I think, this Friday.
Woo!
So I'm looking forward to that. But I would love to hear, what was the process of collecting these contributions like for you? How did it feel as you were collecting all these experiences and reading these experiences and poetry and things that other people had written around this topic?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because you feel like you're connected between channels, right? So it feels like someone who wrote a poem or had an experience is on the receiving end of a spiritual channel, right? Like they're being given the gift of the spirit to receive this. And then for me to be able to work with Ashley and Trina to collect them in one place also feels like we're called to do this work. And so that feels like we're working in a spiritual channel. And so it's fascinating because when you put all of those channels together, frankly, it's a little overwhelming. You know, that you I mean, as a person, as a reader, you can pick it up and read one at a time. When you're assigned to read hundreds, right? I'm reading hundreds at a time. It feels like you're drinking from a fire hose of like spiritual onslaught. I mean, spiritual nourishment. And I think that just kind of, in some ways, it felt almost overwhelming to read and read and read and process through and cry when you feel the spirit so strongly as people have these really rich, beautiful experiences.
How beautiful and how sacred to be able to be given that privilege
It feels absolutely like a sacred privilege.
of collecting just those moments of connection between the divine and their children.
Absolutely.
I'm so grateful for the work that you have done for that. Why do you feel it's important to have a way and a place to share these experiences, these journeys, these stories, and insights around our Divine Mother?
Well, when you read the Book of Mormon, Nephi got sent back to get the record. We have always, as a people, valued the record. And I think that we're told to write journals. We're told to keep a record of our lives, that in bearing witness of our lives, in bearing witness of the moments of faith we've had. So I'm a terrible journal keeper, for the record. But there was a while where I was keeping a book about the times when I felt God's hand in my life. And it was a red velvet cover book. So every time it was a very tactile, pleasing thing. So every time I picked it up, I got a little bit of this like warmth feeling. But it meant that when you had other days, and we all have other days, that you could pick it up and open it and feel God's love, right? I think that's why records are important, is that you can see progress, you can see failings, you can see in my own writings, right, of my journaling, like you can see where you've had need, you can see the need for humility, you can see celebration of growth. And so to have a record of people's feelings and thoughts on mother or on their mother in heaven and sharing it with people means that we all collectively get to have this record of joy. But I think that having bearing testimony of collective experience and joy is just a way to lift community.
I love when you talk about just the way that we even have our classes or our testimony meetings. And why do we have those? It's like we know that there is power in sharing our experiences with the divine and in a way that can be a part of cherishing them, right? Because when we have had something really beautiful and really that has given us life, spiritual life and connection to God, then it can be beautiful to share that in a way with others that can help them to feel the love of God as well.
We are admonished in the scriptures to put our light on a hill, right? And so to me, this is exactly that. If we have felt the light of God touching our lives, Heavenly Father, Jesus, and or Heavenly Mother, then holding up divine light is a blessing.
Absolutely. Yes, I love that. And I've had people in my life who have talked about their concerns about, and I know you've probably spoken about this on other podcasts, but if somebody's new to this and they're feeling this concern, right, about, these things are too sacred to share, or if they're concerned about, well, we shouldn't be talking about these things because these are speculation. What is your response to those who feel those worries and those fears?
Yeah, I have about 5 different responses since it's probably rooted in the same place, but there are 5 different concerns. And so one is we always celebrate the sacred. So Heavenly Mother is no more sacred than Christ. And so if we're going to speak and celebrate Christ openly, then why would we not do the same for our mother on the concept of whether or not she's too sacred to talk about, right? There's plenty of other sacred things we readily and easily speak of.
Right. I mean, I think about the temple, and with the temple, it's sacred and we don't say everything that happens there, but we talk about it constantly. We are cherishing it and saying, go to the temple, connect with the temple.
Right, right. And so I think it's a matter of how you're talking about it. If you're speaking in a derogatory way, such as Heavenly Mother doesn't matter, that to me is taking God's name in vain.
Yeah.
You're saying God doesn't matter. And so to me, that's actually worse than speaking of her because she's sacred, right? As far as how you go about it, I actually think that's valid. So I spent some time talking with women who felt very differently about Heavenly Mother because I wanted to understand their opinion. And at the end of that, we wrote a piece, Bethany and I, and one of the other women wrote a piece. And she said that she preferred to keep the doctrine of Heavenly Mother close to her heart, like Mary did with her thoughts on Jesus, Mary, the mother of Jesus, as it talks about in the scriptures. Now, if that's how she wants to do it, that's just fine because we all get to have our own relationship with deity and we get to have our own relationship with humanity. And we all get to have an opinion about how we let those intersect. It was super interesting. When I moved to India, I lived there for 8 years, I was really caught off guard by how frequently people discussed faith, religion, spirituality. It was 100% woven in to their life. And here in the West, we would say it's bad manners to talk politics, faith, money, right? These are the things that are kind of taboo subjects that like you just don't bring up those things. You don't say to someone, "How much money do you make?" And when was the last time you went to church? Right? Like it's just this is not polite, right? In
Mhm.
fact, I told my husband I had worked for years with people and had no idea what their faith reckoning was because I have those conversations with people I'm close to, but not necessarily all my coworkers. And it wasn't a matter of like hiding my bushel. I mean, everybody knew I was LDS, right? But it was just a matter of that their faith was their business. And then I moved to India, and all of a sudden it was everywhere all the time. When we got a new machine at the factory, they would have a puja blessing, and the whole department would come and bless the machine,
That's
right? Because
amazing.
this was how they functioned, right? It was
Yeah.
not considered ill mannered at all to have conversations about faith. And so, one, we have different cultures who handle different ideas of faith. And in that, we have different individuals. And so, if this woman wanted to hold it close to her heart, that's a completely valid reaction for her. However, it's not a valid reaction for me. That's not how I feel about it. That's not how I want to talk about it. That's not how I want to intersect with the world on it. And so she may be, and I don't know her well enough. I'm just this is speculation about her.
Yeah.
Like she may be a die-hard baptism for the dead person. I have no idea. Maybe this is the thing that she goes around telling all of her neighbors, "You should get names. This is amazing. We should do this. Let's get this. Everybody in my family, get the names together." I mean, maybe that's the thing she wants to proselytize on. That's fine. We have a very
Yeah.
rich history of proselytizing. But for me, I feel so much joy in our mother, so much joy that for me, it's a matter of feeling called to share that joy. Like I am literally the like, oh, that I were an angel with a trumpet kind of approach, from the Book of Mormon. Like that I really feel that expansive joy that I want to share. And I don't think that should be grudged. I don't begrudge her keeping close to her heart. I don't expect that she begrudges me my enthusiasm,
Right.
even if it's different, and that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that example that different people, including those who may feel hesitant to share about this or may feel fear around sharing this or talking about it, that they can probably see in their own lives other things that they feel called to really share about and truths and light from God. And I think, even with Mary, when you share that experience about Mary keeping those things close to her heart, it's interesting because she did end up at a point sharing that. She treasured them in her heart. She held them close for a while, and then she shared them.
Yeah,
And they became a part of our scriptural canon that
yeah,
blessed all of us so
yeah,
much.
yeah. And one thing we should say here, because I really do believe that I 100 like I can't even say it's I'm 100%. It's like 120,000%. I believe that people get to live their own lives.
Absolutely.
But one thing that we should be clear on is that if someone's feeling a personal hesitation, that's their business.
Absolutely.
But no prophet or apostle has ever said we should not speak of Heavenly Mother.
Right.
And so Elder Renlund spoke of Heavenly Mother in general conference. If we can speak of Heavenly Mother in general conference across the pulpit, then 100% we're allowed to speak of her and share her. And so I think, unfortunately, there's some people who, well, I was one of them. I was one of the people who was raised being told that Heavenly Mother was too holy to talk about, too sacred to talk about. We didn't know enough about her. All of those things. That was what I breathed when I was growing up. But what we've actually learned is that that's not true. That's actually speculation.
Right.
And that us taking a cue from what prophets and apostles have said for now hundreds of years. If you go to the Mother There article, they didn't say exhaustive, but they said extensive that no prophet or apostle said that we have never been told not to speak of her. No prophet or apostle has ever said we shouldn't speak of her. And they were exhaustive on that. They did analyze all prophets and apostles. But they found there are 600 mentions of Heavenly Mother through our history from the time of church to 2010, and none of them ever said that. So we made that up. We did that to ourselves. And because it suited the theology at the time, it suited the culture at the time, it got spread around. And we need to be careful. Again, like someone can hold this in their heart if they want to hold their heart. That's their choice. But let's be very clear about what's actually been said or not said about the topic.
Yeah, I know. I feel similarly, that people, those that feel that they want to keep it close to their heart in that way can. And it's hard when sometimes individuals then share it as if that has been a commandment and like they want to enforce that upon others. And I think a lot of our listeners have experienced that, have experienced silencing from those around them about this topic, which can be hard. And what would you say to those that have experienced that to help?
I think this sounds funny. I think I'm a terrible person to answer that question. So I'll take a stab at it, but honestly, I'm probably not the right person to answer that. And the reason I'm not the right person to answer that is because I believe in differentiation between humans. And so if someone says to me, I'm really uncomfortable with you saying that, I'll say, okay, and carry on because their discomfort is their business and it's not my business. And so if I am educated and knowledgeable about, for instance, that no prophet or apostle has ever said this, right? I know that. And so that means I can share that with them and say, actually, did you know? Or I can just shrug and say, okay, you can be uncomfortable, but that doesn't change that I'm not uncomfortable.
Right.
And on top of that, I'm okay with people. I'm okay with discomfort. I'm okay with me being uncomfortable. So just last night, we had people over for dinner and we had this rollicking discussion about different ideas in faith. And not everyone at the table, I mean, some of us shared the same faith, not all of us, but we all had really different opinions about things. What about this? What about this? How do you feel about this? How about this? And everyone, I think, had a different opinion at some point in time. And it was a little bit uncomfortable at times to have people be like, well, what about this? Or what about this? Right?
Yeah.
And that's okay. It's okay to be uncomfortable. So it's okay for someone else to be uncomfortable when I speak. It's okay for me to be uncomfortable when they're uncomfortable. I mean, like,
Right.
we all get
Yeah.
to be uncomfortable. And so I think knowing what brings you joy, knowing what your bedrock truth is, can keep you in a very calm place.
Yeah.
Right? And so my husband is not of our faith. Marrying him was the most clear answer to prayer I've ever received. Like, knock me to the ground, physical answer to prayer. That's never happened any other time. Those discussions with him are not always comfortable, but he'll say, what do you actually know? And I'll say, I know my parents love me. I know my Heavenly Father and my Heavenly Mother are my parents. And I know that because of the experiences I've had. And with that kind of bedrock, I wouldn't wish someone to be uncomfortable. I wouldn't go out of my way to make someone uh,
Totally.
uncomfortable on this, but their comfort or discomfort doesn't change my bedrock.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. So one thing I've noticed for myself is that because I know in my congregation, there are people with a wide variety of feelings around this.
Mhm.
And so there are times when God to me, it is my mother and father. It is this balanced combination of the masculine and the feminine. And I received inspiration at one point that when I've been asked to stand as witness of God, that God is masculine and feminine. It's this balance.
Yeah.
And that when I am only sharing about Heavenly Father, when it's something that applies to them
Mhm.
both,
Mhm.
then I am bearing, in a way, an inaccurate witness of the nature of God
Yeah.
and an incomplete witness. And so when I speak, and it's not like I'm intentionally trying to make some change,
Yeah.
around me, but when I speak and when I bear witness about God or my experiences with God, I will speak of heavenly parents because that
Yeah.
is what it is. But I've also noticed that sometimes in my concern for the feelings of others, or at church, just this culture of kind of silence around her. I'll bring in quotes that talk about her when I'm teaching and things like that. But sometimes I am very hesitant to share my spiritual experiences that have been with her in particular there, because I don't feel that they'll be received very well. Right.
Yeah. And I think that you hit on it kind of in two ways, which I think is important to tease out from what you're just speaking about. One is always being spirit led. If you're not feeling compelled to share your experiences, then don't.
Right.
Like it is sacred. And so if you were sitting there and you're like, I don't think this will go, right? Then don't share. Like, we believe in being led by the Spirit. I think the second thing that was important about what you said was it's a matter of where your heart is, right? And so what is your goal? What is your intention? Being nasty or being belligerent, I mean, okay, I think God can use anything for good. I think anything can have a silver lining. I think anything can end up with goodness as a result. I think that's the divine transformation, right?
Yes,
Is that
absolutely.
they can work for our good no matter what we do. So, fine. But so, because I was going to say belligerence, is maybe not the best approach, but I don't think that's actually true. So we ended up with the word of wisdom because Emma was disgruntled. She did not appreciate her role in cleaning up a nasty floor after a meeting of the prophets when there was spit and tobacco all over. Disgusting, right? And her disgruntlement in going to the prophet and her husband and saying, talk to God about this, is how we ended up in the word of wisdom. And so I think even disgruntlement has its place in creating things to come down the pike. So I'm not saying that can be a tool in God's hands. All things can be a tool in God's hands. But for our own sake, living with a heart that is joyous is a lot more pleasant than living with a heart that is angry or hard. I'd love Virginia Pierce's book about having a soft heart. It was one of my New Year's resolutions. It probably should actually just be like a lifetime resolution, not just New Year's, right? But to live with a soft heart, to live feeling open and receiving and kind towards others. And so when I go into a situation that something like that might be happening, I just check my own heart. How's my heart? Is my heart soft? Is it open? I also think that she is God and joyous. And if I let any flavor of gnarl taint her, then she doesn't deserve that, right? She doesn't deserve angst. She's our mother, right? So if I'm feeling angsty about this, it kind of makes me be a surly teenager, right? It's like I'm "Meh, meh, meh, meh," right? We've all seen that. We've all done that, and we've all
Yeah.
witnessed that,
We've all
right?
been there.
We've all been
And if we
there.
have children that age, then we've
And
probably
we
seen it in
ourselves
our
were
very
children of that
personal lives.
age, right? Exactly. And so instead, I think sometimes if I'm like, what is where, right? I just pause and I think, Heavenly Mother doesn't deserve my angst. And as soon as I pause and I bring that back into alignment, then joy comes back. And I think when you were so kind in your introduction, and I think part of what you were talking about was my stamina or my optimism or my enthusiasm or joy around this topic. And I think it's easy most days because I really carry this she doesn't deserve angst.
Yeah.
So if I'm feeling petulant teenager about this, then I need to fix my heart,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Well, and I love what you were talking about with, those moments just following the Spirit, because, while I've received this answer that when I share about God, I need to share an accurate whole
Mhm, mhm.
testimony, witness of God. But how, I said there have been moments when, like, I had an experience with particularly my divine mother there's times when I feel kind of all of them together. And there's times when you have experiences that really are with a particular parent, right?
Yeah.
And so it's interesting because I had an experience where I had an answer as I was praying, and I had felt my mother's presence with me. It was around an issue of motherhood and trying to figure out what to do. And I shared it briefly in my last episode, but I felt my mother there with me, and her just saying, I am walking this path of motherhood with you, and I'll help you one step at a time.
Yeah.
And I felt called to bear my testimony at church, but I didn't feel like I could share that particularly. And so I kind of shared, that I had prayed and that I'd felt God with me, because I knew that it would just almost maybe create contention or just like discomfort in others, which is really sad.
Yeah.
And while I share about my parents, it's interesting how I feel like a lot of people feel a hesitation and like they're unable to share just honestly about their experiences that involve just the mother.
Yeah.
And I feel like people are even more hesitant. They feel like that would be even less allowed within their areas of worship, than to share an experience that they had with Jesus, with ancestors, honestly, with even like evil spirits. I feel like people feel like they can share all those at church, and yet the majority of people that I talk to feel like it would be more accepted for them to share a story about how an ancestor appeared to them or came or comforted them than their own divine mother,
So I think what's interesting about human nature is that, and again, always be led by the Spirit. So just start with that framework. But then right next to that is, sometimes I think human beings preemptively rule themselves out. And so again, at this dinner table conversation we had last night, there was a woman who has been a convert for 18 years now. But she said, I'm afraid I still don't understand things enough, that I'm afraid sometimes to speak up. And then she listed out some of her concerns or some of her wanderings or wonderings about different aspects of the gospel. And I started laughing because I said, you are concerned because you feel you have only, quote unquote, been a member for 18 years. But I know plenty of people who share exactly the concerns you just laid down. And by us not sharing, we actually dim light. Right? So there's the Marianne Williams quote that Nelson Mandela used in his speech, that like, who are you not to be? And I'm going to butcher it, but beautiful, fabulous, light-filled, we're all children of God, right? And so if the Spirit's telling you not to share, fine, like always.
Absolutely.
But I would also encourage people to check their gut and say, why am I not feeling comfortable with this? Because I think sometimes if we're preemptively shutting ourselves down, we're literally robbing someone else of the opportunity to be blessed by light and knowledge.
Right.
And if you're saying, I'm not you, but if people are saying, I'm not comfortable sharing because I'm going to be judged, that feels to me pretty close to tragedy, because we wouldn't say, I won't fill my spirit, I won't share my testimony of Jesus because I'll be judged. If you're a missionary knocking on a door, do you say, oh, better not share the testimony of Jesus, whoever's on the other side of this door may judge me for being Christian, right? And I can say I've 100% felt judged before for being Christian and for being LDS. That's happened in my life. But does that change who I want to be? Again, someone else's judgment is not my business, right? So I'm not trying to say ignore the Spirit if you don't feel compelled, but I'm saying at least pause and consider where that discomfort is coming from. And then ask. Say a little prayer, my mom always said, even the little part, say a little prayer, right? So say a little prayer and say, should I be sharing this? And then follow that. Because I think a lot of us would be surprised. One of the things about the Cherish book is how surprising how many people of many different ages. So when people submitted the things to Cherish to us, they also submitted their age and where they lived. And I'm telling you, we got submissions from children all the way up to people in their 80s. And so, and all over, mostly America, not so much outside of America. But I sat there and I thought, these are people in all areas, walks of life. One man had said he was a sea captain. He'd been out in the Bering Strait, often by himself, and had felt his mother's comfort on multiple occasions.
I have chills.
Right? Yes. Like, think about the other day, my daughter came running in because she'd bumped her toe, right? And she just flew herself into my arms, right? She wanted her mother's comfort.
Right.
Right? My nephew's here visiting right now, and the other day something happened to him. Now I tried to comfort him. He didn't want me. He wanted his mother, right? And I think a desire for a mother's love is very universal and very beautiful. And so if we are not sharing because we're being uncomfortable, we're denying someone else the opportunity to feel that love.
Yeah.
So I think say a little prayer, do a check, figure out where the motivations are coming from. Are they righteous motivations?
Right.
Or is it just a cultural wisp, that's kind of swirled around that we need to step to the side of, right?
Right. Yeah, I
And I will
love
also
that.
say I have only once shared a personal experience that I had with my Heavenly Mother that is so powerful that it feels almost overwhelming to speak of it. I'm not going to share it today, right?
Yeah.
But I think there's also a difference between speaking of a testimony or speaking of what we know doctrinally and speaking of our experiences. So I'm completely comfortable. We just did an art show on Heavenly Parents in Provo, and it was called Be Like Them, which was a direct quote from the Gospel Topics essay, and actually a quote by Elder Oaks, who says, "Our theology begins with Heavenly Parents. Our highest aspiration is to be like them." That's Elder Oaks. So if I'm standing and I'm bearing testimony, in testimony meeting or in a talk or whatever, I'm completely comfortable quoting Elder Oaks from the Gospel Topics essay.
Right.
Right? And so I think there's also degrees of comfort. You can be comfortable in one thing and not comfortable in something else. You don't have to leave Heavenly Mother out simply because you don't want to share things that feel too sacred to share. Right?
Yeah, and I think that, from my experience, I think that was what I was feeling in that moment
Yeah.
was that I felt like it was a beautiful, really sacred experience for me. And I didn't feel like I knew it would be honored and held as sacred and in that way. And I feel like I didn't want to share it there in a space where it wouldn't be
Yeah.
honored and seen. And I also have had experiences, that's one that I did share on here in a setting that I did feel like it would be honored and seen. But I have also had other experiences that I feel like are even more sacred that I have not, like you were saying. And so I think it's good to really think about how the different circumstances. How are we doing things because we're afraid of what other people will think about us? Are we afraid to even share the doctrine that our own leaders have shared because we're afraid of what other people will think about us?
Right.
Are there times and situations where we feel also called to share sacred experiences just like we do at testimony meeting in our classes? And are we holding back and shining our light again because we're afraid of what other people will think of us? Or if we really tap back into God, will we receive the answer that maybe we should share that light anyway and have the courage and to let go of that fear? So I just love kind of the nuance that you brought to that and saying it's okay sometimes, but what are our motivations? Where is it coming from? And what are we feeling called from the divine to do? And I think that's why in part I really wanted to have this series is because for a lot of individuals, they may have experiences that they would love to share and hold on a bushel, but they maybe don't have a place where they feel like it will be honored and held as beautiful and sacred.
And I think it's so tricky, right? Because back to the Marianne Williams quote, the more we feel to let our light shine, the more we give permission almost. Give permission is a bad term. I think that's the word from the quote, but it's the more we open our light, the more the others feel comfortable sharing their light.
Absolutely.
And so I've noticed that once I gave a Relief Society lesson on Elder Renlund's talk, talking about Heavenly Mother and how this is our doctrine in the essay, and let's talk about the doctrine. All of a sudden in my ward, more people started using the term Heavenly Parents, right? That didn't happen before that lesson. And so as I share doctrine, and as we said, there's differences between sharing doctrine and sharing personal experiences, but as I share doctrine, that spread light, right?
Yeah.
And so I think if you care enough about this topic to be listening to this podcast, then I would hope that you would feel emboldened to share light.
Absolutely. And with respect, and love and not with trying to force our desires, upon the world or our
No, but
congregation.
think about that's how we do missionary work. Like, it's not disrespectful to knock on someone's door and say, I've got a great message for you. This makes me happy. This gives me joy. I'd like to share my joy with you. That's not disrespectful, right? I mean, we share recommendations for restaurants all the time, right? Like,
Right.
proselytizing is not disrespectful. However, if someone says, I'm not really interested in that, I'm not really into that thing, to be go like, what's wrong with you? I mean, like, that's when it's disrespectful, right?
Totally.
And
Absolutely.
so, even in our enthusiasm for Mother in Heaven, being respectful of someone else's choice around this is, I think, a healthy way to go about it, right?
Absolutely. And sometimes, for me, you may have leaders that they don't feel as comfortable with it. And so, I have gone to leaders and said, hey, I have this idea. I have this love. We have this doctrine. Can we share it with our members? Can we share this light? And sometimes you will get shut down, even when you are doing it from a good place in your heart. And so, you may not be able to give a lesson about Elder Renlund's talk because you may not receive from those that have the authority to make those decisions, the ability to do that.
Anyone who has that experience, I would recommend going and reading Ardith G. Cap's biography. Or even going and listening to the Magnify podcast, where Laurel Day and Sherry Dew and Sharon, Ardith's sister, discussed Ardith. She made it abundantly clear that she trusted her personal revelation.
Absolutely.
Now, that doesn't mean you supersede
Right.
the stewardships that are not yours, but that doesn't mean you don't trust your personal revelation.
Absolutely.
And it may just be a matter of timing. Ardith often found several different stories. I won't take the time to tell them here, but these stories are fabulous. There's several times where it just became abundantly clear that she was absolutely inspired, and it just had to be the right time and the right leader to hear her.
Yeah. And so for those of you who may be listening, who have tried and who have not had that support, just I hope that you can feel, it's like I have had those experiences, and I hope that you can feel to still trust your inspiration, and that still maybe there was good in your efforts. And regardless of whether or not it can happen on a larger scale in your area, whether or not you have the authority to say, hey, we're going to do a lesson on this or a talk on that, that you can still continue sharing your light in the ways that you feel led to by the Spirit, and that you can still share doctrine. And I know, when I have kind of made efforts and sometimes they haven't worked out in the way that, whatever it was that I was asking, if we could do this or that, I still feel like the conversations are important, and they are still a way of dispelling myths, right? There are opportunities to have conversations and to say, like you were saying, oh, did you know that what didn't come from our leadership? And if you still feel that way, that's okay. And I respect that. But, it's important to still have conversations.
100%. I fully agree with you. I also read something just this morning, and I'm sorry I don't remember where, or I'd give credit where credit's due, because it was brilliant. Maybe you can put it in the notes after you launch this. But I read online where they're talking about in the scriptures that the prophet prayed and the rain stopped for 3.5 years. And then the prophet prayed again and the rain started and the crops grew. What's amazing that this person pointed out was something I'd never considered before, such a brilliant idea, is that in order for the crops to grow, the seeds had to be there. So even though the rains had stopped, the farmers still planted the seeds because someday the rain would come.
Hmm.
And so I think of that when something may not bear fruit as soon or in the way that I would perhaps have preferred, but to think about seeds. This is plowing in seeds. And when it rains, it will blossom.
Absolutely.
And I
Yeah.
think that that's true for individuals in their own hearts. It's true for institutions. It's true for the world. I mean, the world has so many beautiful and wonderful things about it. It also has so many things that are not right. I don't like the word right, like not loving, right? And I think that it is not our job to do something for the fruit, even though we always say, like, by their fruit you shall know them. But like, it's our job to plant the seeds,
Right.
right? And the reins are in our Heavenly Parents' hands, right? And that for different people at different times, that will come in different ways. So I have no control over the rain, right? What I have control over is I can plant seed after seed after seed after seed. So this podcast is a seed, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you can put
Absolutely.
that in very dry ground, knowing that it's a good seed. If you're talking about the love of our parents, that is a good seed.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Again, I love the fact that we can know that when you think about children that don't have both of their parents, that we have a mother and a father. And I know I can't, I look forward to the day when every child of God knows that and feels it and
Yeah.
feels like they know their parents, both of them, and that they can have a relationship with both of them and celebrate that. It's such a beautiful gift. How has knowledge of your relationship with your mother in heaven, how has it changed you? Was there a time was there a shift for you when you really didn't feel like you knew her and where you did come to know her? And what was that process like and how has that changed you?
Whew, that's a really long one for our 4 minutes left. So there's a couple of nuances in there. One is I think it's an ongoing process. So I wouldn't say there's a time where I didn't know her and now I know her. I would say it's ongoing, right? And so I don't really feel like I wouldn't speak definitively to that, right? Because we're all a work in art, right? A work in progress here. We're all masterpieces being created. And so that's in progress. I would say that I had a lot of questions about, and I still do. I'm a person with questions about how women are to function in this world. And the world has set up a model that it's not very conducive to women thriving in many ways. In small ways, like crash test dummies aren't made on an average woman's body and size, so women are more likely to be injured in a car accident than a man because the airbags are not designed for women.
Right.
Okay, right? And there's many more. There's actually an amazing book talking about the design, the literal design of the world not being made for women.
Mm-hmm.
So, lots of questions about how a woman is to intersect with this world. And for me, knowing that I am made in her image, which is our doctrine, that's not speculation. We are made in her image, means I am also made in the image of God. If we don't embrace that, then it means only half the people on the planet were made in the image of God.
Right.
So if only men are made in the image of God, then what does that leave me to be? I mean, there were psychologists who thought that women were just an aberration of men, that somehow we were born with less than men, right?
Right.
That we had less of a soul or less of a body or less of
Uh-huh.
parts, right?
Mm-hmm.
And being very, very clear that the supreme beings of the universe are my parents, that I'm beloved, that my divine destiny, that's a direct quote from the Gospel Topics essay, my divine destiny is to be Mother in heaven. That makes all the difference in the world, to know the dignity that I can carry myself with in this world, regardless of the flawed structure around me. The grace, I have grace for who I am and who I'm becoming. And that's directly tied to the knowledge that Heavenly Mother is my divine destiny. And exuberance, not just dignity and grace. Let's go for some exuberance.
I imagine that our Divine Mother has just all of the joy and exuberance that you have. So I'm adding that into my little image of
maybe that's
what
a characteristic
I see
that
in
I
her.
got, right?
Oh my goodness, I love that. Absolutely. And thank you so much. I appreciate so much you sharing your story, appreciate you sharing your experience in cherishing and gathering together the stories of others and the experiences of others to be shared upon a candlestick for the world, to bring light to the world. Thank you so much for that work.
And when we named it Cherish, because of the line in the Gospel Topics essay, this is a cherished and distinctive doctrine. So this is my version of how I cherish something, is I share it, I celebrate it, I give honor to it. So that's my offering.
Yes, I love that. So if anyone is wanting to go check out the second volume, it's called Cherish, The Joy of Our Mother in Heaven.
The first one is the joy. The second one is the love of our Heavenly Mother.
Ah, okay. The love of our Heavenly Mother or Mother in Heaven?
Mother in Heaven. Sorry. See, I don't even know my own title.
Okay. Yeah. So you can find it on Amazon and hopefully you can grab that and it can bring some joy into your life. And then we'll look forward to hearing more stories. I may have some, in fact, I'm pretty sure I'll have at least some already that will be some who have contributed to these volumes. But I really look forward to having conversations with others about their experiences with this doctrine, with their journeys with Mother in Heaven, and give them a chance to share joyfully their experiences, their testimonies in a place where, again, they know that it can be honored. And I'm grateful that we have this place to do that. So thank you so much, McArthur. Thank you for all of the work that you have done.
It's been delightful.
Thank you for listening. If you enjoyed this episode, feel free to share it. And if you haven't yet, please leave us a review. If you'd like to support the podcast monetarily, you can make a monthly donation at anchor.fm/inherimage. We hope you'll tune in next Sunday for another inspiring episode.